Hello, my name is Csaba Székely and this is my Masterclass. I'm going to talk to you about 6 things a playwright can learn from the most underrated theatrical genre, which is farce. I'm going to begin with what is learning, because I wanted to say a beginner playwright, but what a beginner playwright can learn from farce. But actually, what we playwrights do is constant learning. You see, each play is about human beings. There are no plays that are not about humans. So what we do is we constantly seek and research and discover what is it like to be human. So playwriting is actually an adventure in learning to be human. Why did I choose farce? I said it's because the most underrated theatrical genre. Farce is actually not really part of the elite theatrical culture. It's more like a popular culture. So what is popular culture? What is pop culture? It's culture for masses. It is made for entertainment. It is not just for the intellectuals. It's not just for people who can think outside the box, but is meant for everybody. But in ancient Greece, theater used to be a mass entertainment. It used to entertain everybody. It was one of the greatest festivals. The Dionysias were one of the greatest festivals. The other one was the sports festivals. So there were the sports and theater. These were the 2 forms of mass entertainment. And there were 3 days when all the citizens of Athens gathered together. Thousands of people were watching theater, and they were enjoying watching cruelty and misery. Theater was so important that the wisest man of that period, Aristotle, wrote 2 books about it. One of them is lost, but the other one survived, Poetics. And it was so influential that even today people use Aristotle's Poetics when they want to teach playwriting. And in Hollywood they still use Aristotle's Poetics even to this day. Tragedy has very strict rules. Aristotle studied them, and his observations are still used today in American cinema. And actually, people who write books about playwriting, they are, in my opinion, more like books about screenwriting. They use Aristotle's observations and teachings, but they are more useful for cinema than for theater. If you look at contemporary American drama, they are not anything like Aristotle's teaching. They are very, very different from Aristotle's Poetics, from the 3-act structure and what they teach you in playwriting books. Because what they teach you is very epic. They teach you how to write a movie with a character who starts a journey and how that character ends. But American theater is very dramatic. It has one situation, and everything moves around that situation, more or less. Why movies and why Aristotle used tragedy as a model is because tragedy has very, very strict rules. And because of its strict rules, it can be applied very easily to movies. Not so much for theater anymore. I chose farce as a model because it also has very, very strict rules. And I think it's a better way, it's a better tool for playwriting if you want to learn techniques. You can learn craftsmanship from genres that have very, very strict rules, and farce is one of them. Most people think about farce as a lower form of comedy, but actually it's a higher form of playwriting. It requires a very specific, very, very good craftsmanship. Everything has to work, every piece of farce has to work like a Swiss watch. If there's a piece that doesn't work, then the farce is not good, it won't work. And I'm not talking about using farcical elements in comedies, but classic farces, like 19th century French farce, like Georges Feydeau, who wrote A Flea in Her Ear and many other farces. He was a master of farce. He called them vaudevilles. And modern British farce, like Michael Frayn's works or Ray Cooney's works. The first thing you can learn from farce is that the one and only purpose of farce is to entertain the audience, to make them laugh, more precisely. If the audience laughs, it's a good farce. If the audience doesn't laugh, it's a bad farce. There is no third option. In a farce, there is not a single minute that can pass without the audience laughing. Everything is about the joke. You either making a joke or preparing a joke in a farce. One of the great farce writers, farceurs, Brian Rix, has counted how many jokes he wrote in his play Dry Rot, and he counted 575 jokes. That's an average of 5 laughters per minute, and that's a lot. You have to be very good to make the audience laugh 5 times a minute. There is a myth about being funny, that you have to be born funny. Not true. There is no funny gene. Comedy is rhythm and precision. Everything can be comical, everything can be a joke, everything, even death can be funny if delivered with the right pace at the right moment and with precision. So an unfunny person, a person who doesn't really have a sense of humor in real life, can still be funny as a playwright because he can deliver his lines at the right moment. And this is one of the things we can learn from farce. The other thing we can learn is from this joke part is that we can joke being the most important thing of a farce, we can find the most important thing in our play. What is the most important thing in your play? It is the important thing. The same way that farce uses jokes all the time, you need to use important things all the time. You need important things happening constantly in your play, one after another. You need either an important thing happening or preparing an important thing. preparing the next important thing happening. If unimportant things happen, unimportant dialogues are delivered, then everybody will get bored. No one is entertained. The second thing we can learn from farce is that farce never lies about life. 19th century French farce evolved from variety shows like vaudeville, which itself evolved from commedia dell'arte. And farce uses many forms of comedy. But what is different from all the other genres is that farce loses the optimism at the end. Optimistic ending in farce has completely disappeared. In comedy, there is optimism at the end. The hero succeeds and probably will live a happy life. He will be happy ever after. In farce, there is no real succeeding. It's only temporary. There's a temporary solution. Nothing really changes from the beginning of the play. There's only a slight balance regained. And we find out that everybody is a jerk. That's probably the only difference in farce from the big. It's the only thing that differentiates the beginning of farce from the end of it. We get back where we started, but in the meantime, we found out that everybody is a selfish jerk. So there is no hero in a farce. Firstly, because everybody is selfish, and secondly, because in farce there is nothing worth dying for. There are no ideals in that world. There are only human weaknesses. Many people think that farce is romantic because there's always love involved. There's always a young man chasing a young woman, or vice versa. But that's not really love. That's just the character's obsession to get what they need. It might seem romantic, but it's very selfish. And the other thing why it looks like a romantic thing is that it does have some kind of happy ending, but it's not really happy. People don't change. They never change in a farce. The farce doesn't think that the world can get better. It just shows the way the world is. You see, Romanticism gave us the idea that romantic love exists, that there is a perfect match for us somewhere in the world waiting for us. And what we need to do is wait for them, meet them, and then get together and live a happy life. Farce tells us the opposite. It tells us that no one in this world is easy to live with, that no one is normal. Everybody is a little bit crazy. And that's true because all of us have childhoods. We have complex emotional lives. We have psychological baggages that we carry on all the time, and makes us a little bit crazy in every relationship. And farce also tells us that everybody has secrets. What romanticism teaches us is that we have time to love. Romantic heroes somehow always have time. They have time to love. In farce they don't have time for that. Because they want to stay alive. They are preoccupied with getting out of trouble. They don't have time for love. There is a quote from John Cleese you know the great guy from Monty Python, and he said that, he quotes Bertrand Russell, a philosopher, Nobel Prize winner, who once said that a secret to happiness is to face the fact that the world is horrible. Once you realize that things are pretty hopeless, then you just have a laugh, and you don't waste time on things that you cannot change. So all these leads us to the third thing we can learn from Farce, which is, in Farce there is a constant tension because the tragic ending is so close. Farce is closely related to tragedy. It is much closer to tragedy than it is to comedy. Brian Rix says that farce is tragedy with trousers down. And most farcers like Fedor or Cooney say that they get their inspiration from real life. They are looking for tragedy when they start writing a farce. Tragedies that happen in real life. But they produce a twist. They show us the funny side of tragedy. You know, for example, bigamy is a very serious thing. My ex-wife had an uncle living in the United States who got cancer, then he died. He had a family there, and after he died, his family found out that he had another family here in Romania. He was a traveling man, a salesman or something. He traveled a lot between United States and Romania. And so he died with leaving two families behind and a great debt that the two families had to pay. And it was horrible for both of the families, for both the widows. They didn't know about each other. And even on his deathbed, he never mentioned that he had another family. It was a horrible thing. And it is horrible until you put it on a stage. Because then it becomes funny somehow. Because you start following the person, the bigamist, and you can see him in different situations when he is almost caught and have to get out of trouble, and that's funny. So what we can learn from this is to take something that is in real life is tragic and show it how it is with a little bit of twist, and it becomes not just funny, it becomes complex, it becomes worth watching at. The farce's starting point is almost the same as Euripides, the ancient Greek tragedian's starting point, which is that the main character doesn't have to commit great wrongs in order to fall. The tragic hero at Euripides is simply human, and because he's human, he deserves to die. However, in farce, a character never dies. They just don't succeed. So farcers usually take a person and put them in a disastrous situation. They show us the worst day of the person's life. While we are watching this, we laugh at the worst thing that can happen to a person, because it doesn't happen to us, it happens to somebody else. And we still feel the connection because we are also human. It could happen to us, but it doesn't. Ray Cooney says that what Shakespeare does with kings, I do with taxi drivers. So the main thing to learn here is that you take an ordinary person and show us that he is human. Put him in a disastrous situation and see him fall. And just like in tragedy, the main character in a farce is almost always at the edge of catastrophe. This is what sustains dramatic tension. In order to get out of trouble, the protagonist must tell a lie. And when he gets out of trouble, he gets into another bigger trouble. He has to deliver an even bigger lie, and a bigger lie, and a bigger lie. And the whole thing is like a pyramid of lies. And that's life. The fourth thing we can learn from farce is there are no heroes and villains. We know that heroes are capable of great sacrifice, that they are noble, they are brave, they seek justice. We also know that villains are wicked and cruel, and they are traitors, abusers, rapists. In farce, there is no such thing, because everybody is extremely selfish. They keep chasing only one thing, their own interest. Farce doesn't promise that people can be good. They're not bad either. They're just people. And because there are no heroes and no villains, there's no real enmity. The only enemy is the world itself, the absurdity, the cruelty of the world, the craziness of the world. If we look at the characters, the main difference between a classical play and the farce is like the difference between Karate Kid and Kobrakai. I don't know if you're familiar with the 80s movie Karate Kid with the young boy Daniel, who is always bullied at school, beaten many times, and then he learns karate from a Japanese master, and then he succeeds. He beats his bully, Johnny. Now, there's a fresh entry on Netflix. It is a TV show. It's called Kobrakai, which takes up the story more than 30 years later. And we see the perspective of Johnny. He's now 40-something, maybe 50-year-old guy. You can see why he did what he did. And you can see both characters living their lives, trying to just get along. I don't say that they're trying to do good, but they just try to live. You understand both characters. But if you go under the skin of each character, you can see that the other character is, you can see the other characters, I don't know, you may think that the other character is evil, they're mean, they want to hurt you. But what is good about this show is that they don't want to do bad things. They just want to succeed in their own life. And this is exactly what farce does. The characters just want to succeed. The only thing that is problematic with the farcical characters is that you cannot root for them, because they are so selfish. You don't really care what happens to them. You just want to laugh at them. So this is a thing that you need to learn from somewhere else, how to make characters that audience can root for. But the basic principle that there are no heroes and villains is very good, because you can learn to make complex characters who are not good or bad, but are both. The fifth thing you can learn from farce is that nothing happens without a consequence. Everything has a meaning. If a character has a speech impediment, it will have a greater importance later in the play. If somebody breaks their daily routine, it will have catastrophic consequences. Each scene has a purpose. Almost each sentence has a purpose. It moves the action forward. If there is something in farce that doesn't move the action forward, then it's useless. Playwrights who write farces, they just cut it out. And I think this is one of the most important things in playwriting, to cut out useless things. Reread and rewrite many times until there are no more useless things, until you have just the things that make the character more complex and move the action forward. And finally, the sixth thing you can learn from a farce is that in a farce, the playwright is never present. In a farce, there is no world-changing attitude. Farce accepts the world as it is. It does not say that the world needs to change. It doesn't fight for social justice. It lacks moral teaching, social critique. It has no political message. It wants to teach no lessons. It is actually what Oscar Wilde said, that the artist's purpose is to reveal art and conceal the artist. How a playwright does that when writing a farce, or writing anything else for that matter, is to get inside the character. Because if the character speaks, if you are really inside your character, then your play doesn't need your teaching, your preaching. The character does all the job. If you as an artist have a question about the world, then you should ask that question in your play. But I don't think it's a very good idea to answer that question. If you answer that question, if you give an answer, then it becomes preaching, it becomes a pose that you put yourself somewhere up and you want to teach people. Now the final thing, how you can use all of this in your play. Just the way that a farcical character has an obsession, a goal they want to reach. You probably also have something that burns you, some obsession of you. So what is it? What is your obsession? Put it in a play, write about it. Choose themes that have immediate resonance with you. Do you care about environment or politics or corruption, greed, poverty? Put it in a play, write about that. But don't answer your questions. Don't want to teach, don't be the preacher of your play. Let your character speak. Okay, but how do you do that? Find a person whose life is affected by one of the themes you have chosen. If you chose corruption, then find a person who is affected by corruption or who is corrupt. If it's social injustice, then find somebody from a minority, for example. Find just one person with the problem, because then you can avoid generalizing. Find one person and write about that one single person. If you found your one single person, that you need to find a triad. I mean two other persons, two other characters, to make a triangle. In Farce, there's always a triangle: a husband and wife, and a mistress or a lover. There's a triangle. And this is why the action works so well, because there's a dynamic between those three people. So if you have a character affected by a problem that you're interested in, and you have two other characters that are somehow in a dynamic relationship with your main character, then you can start writing your play. At first, come up with a name, an age, gender, of course, and one dominant personality trait. Then you can start to get to know your characters. It doesn't mean that you have to know their favorite color or what music they are listening to. You just have to know them like you know an uncle. Which means that maybe you don't know your uncle's zodiac sign, but you know how he would react at different situations. You know, for example, that if you were in financial trouble and you would ask him to lend you money, what would he say? You need to get inside the head of your character, and in order to start your play with your character, you need to know what your character wants. In order to do this, you need to fill in the blanks. So just write down the sentence, I want, and just dots, fill in the blanks. What does your character want? And I would do anything to achieve it. If I don't succeed, then I will, and again, fill in that sentence. Because it is very important to know what will happen if your protagonist won't succeed. In Farce, there is no death, but there is the second worst thing, which is shame. In Farce, characters want to avoid public shaming. And I think it is very contemporary problem. Shaming is a very real problem nowadays. So you can use this. And the final thing, maybe it's not the final thing, but it's one of the things that you don't necessarily have to use in each of your plays, but it does good to your play. It's the ticking clock. In Farce, there is always there's not much time. Things are very urgent, and you will find out that if you make things very urgent, then your play will get rhythm, and rhythm gives life, and you want your play to live. Okay, that's it for now.